My name is Chris Schwartz. I'm the managing editor of the English site of neweurasia.net, and I'm the editor for Cyber China, Digital Conversations from Central Asia.
Okay, great. So you just presented the book Cyber China, and could you tell a few words about it?
Okay, so in simplest terms, the book is a history of contemporary Central Asia, written by, about, and for the blogging community of the region. It's from their perspective. And we use blog posts themselves, not in raw form, we do edit them, to tell coherent narratives of the 5 countries and of the region in general. We have 10 chapters total, 5 country specific and 5 for the region.
I've read 1/3 of your book or so, and I found that you do not separate your own narrative from those of the bloggers. How do you explain that?
Right, so that's on purpose. As you may have noticed, that will be editorially distinct from how GVO would do it, or for that matter, an academic book would do it. The reason is because blogging is about perspective, right? I mean, blogging is individuals speaking. So my voice as the editor has to be in there, and it has to be deeply integrated into it. And the idea is that I am, in a sense, the storyteller, but I'm telling the storytellers. So there's a bit of a philosophical aspect to that. And so, in order to tell a narrative of these places, we felt that we had to have the editorial voice, on the one hand, closer, but on the other hand, also it's a bit more reserved at the same time, right? Because I'm speaking, in a sense, through the bloggers, and in turn, we hope that the bloggers are speaking through me, really. Ultimately, it's the real goal. One voice through which many are speaking.
The next question is the thing that you didn't separate it, your own narrative. Well, for some it might seem a little bit unnatural, but
Right.
Don't you have some kind of philosophy about the naturality, the nature of unnatural things, right?
Well, okay, yeah, it is. Some of us at New Eurasia actually have philosophical backgrounds, so we had a bit of a fun time with this book. Conceptually, here I'll put it at different levels because I also have training as an historian. So the first, this book is supposed to be kind of the un-travelogue, the anti-travelogue. What ends up happening is a lot of Westerners come here. Oh, it's the exotic Central Asians. Look at this. They speak Russian and some funny Turkic languages, and I did not want to do that. The network did not want to do that. We thought that'd be, frankly speaking, nonsense. So, so by using my voice to facilitate the emergence of a conversation from this actual region, we were hoping to kind of inverse that process. This is not Central Asia according to Christopher Schwartz. This is Christopher Schwartz trying to somehow filter Central Asia back out so the rest of the world can see it, and also hold up a mirror so Central Asians can see it as well. So in that sense, it's an inner travelogue. At an epistemological level, you know, it's we thought it was an interesting project because you know, you get this pile of raw data at first. It just seems like inchoate nonsense, chaos. You know, discussions all over the place. People talking everything about, you know, from fashion to politics, right? So how do you make sense of this noise? And what we did was we employed the reading community itself and our bloggers to go through the content and to tell us this is interesting here, that's not so interesting there. You know, this seems to be kind of building up this theme there, and so forth. And then they begin to make sense of this and to help you move away the noise, and you start to see that there really is something coherent there underneath. That why are they interested in these topics? What are they saying exactly about the topics, and so forth. And that's how we started constructing a narrative from this. There's also a concern, of course, inevitably about Orientalism, and that's probably the third kind of aspect, philosophically speaking, here. And we were hoping that by essentially crowdsourcing this process, and mind you, we even put up the rough drafts of the chapters for review by the reading community, by the bloggers, which is, well, it's unorthodox. I mean, most authors or editors would never do that. Our donor completely supported it. It was transparency to the max, as far as they were concerned. And so we were hoping that by actually having the community itself, the Central Asians themselves, actually like getting involved in this, we could really counteract any kind of Orientalism that might have come from us, the Westerners, who basically were the team ultimately organizing this project.
So, how do you think blogs and blogging as an action can help, let's say, not fight Orientalism as a as a vice of modern social studies. How do you think that this would work? Does your project is a part of this kind of a
Right.
new, let's say, regional studies with less Orientalism than before?
Well, it's interesting because the project itself began originally. So the predecessor website was thinkingeast.net, which was Central Asia and Middle East by and for young people from these regions, or young people studying these regions. And New Eurasia was originally the blogging division of Thinking East, and then it really became its own thing. But at the very beginning, it was preponderantly Western. It was mostly American and European students working on Central Asia. So it was actually, part of the inspiration came from you guys, actually, Global Voices Online, to reconceive this. Okay, wait a minute. We've got people who can read and write. We've got people in the region who can read and write. Yeah, okay, internet penetration is lousy, but these people can be coherent. They can get their points of view across. They just don't necessarily know how. And the blog, which emerged in the West as a form of journalism originally, diary keeping, sorry. The blog presented itself to us as really the ideal vehicle for this. Now, it's not totally sufficient. It has its own endless problems as well. But as a medium, it really offered the opportunity to get the voice of, let's say, just some young KeyMep student in Almaty here to actually be heard by the larger Russophonic community or the Anglophonic community. And you could put them right out there onto the internet. And there you have it. Now, is this sufficient to combat Orientalism? The obvious answer, the honest answer is no. But it is one hell of a start, because what happens in Orientalism is you have the experts discoursing about that society, and he kind of captures a narrative, and he transforms a narrative, especially in the case of society that doesn't have its own scholastic tradition or its own literary tradition and so on. So then he can kind of imprint himself upon that society, or rather his imprint first works in the West or in imperial power, and then that cycles back to eventually infiltrate and dominate the region itself. So this is all well detailed now since Edward Said. And so by actually directly putting out the voices themselves, what we call in historical discipline social history or public history of the mass, you stand a good chance of counteracting the process, because then the Thomas Friedmans of the world can't just say whatever they want to say about whatever, the Middle East, Central Asia, China, and so on, without having to take consideration that there's a lot of people out there now who can simply say, you're wrong. I'm from this region and you're wrong.
Okay. Your book is published in Russian. Do you plan to publish the same one for English-speaking audience?
It's the other way around, actually. So it was originally written in English and
then
translated into Russian.
See.
But this is a very key and important methodological point, and it represents one of the problems and flaws of a project like this, in all honesty. So I myself do not yet speak Russian, and I certainly do not speak any of the local languages here yet. I was brought aboard the project actually because of my status as an outsider, and because apparently people consider me to be a good writer in English. And so what happened was I was very dependent upon the bloggers and research assistants and our site translator, who translated the book into Russian. His name is Andrei Tolstoy, to do this, which we were hoping would actually help counteract Orientalism in a way. Right? They had to tell me what's important, but it gets methodologically complicated. So what happens is, for example, we have the Russian content that has to be rendered into English. Then we have the local language content also has to be rendered in English. Andre can do the Russian content. We have to get like Anna Sultan to do the Turkmen. We have to get Musa Firbek to do the Uzbek, and so on, right? And all this ends up being compiled into a very coherent English, because I'm the one editing all of it, right? So it very much has a kind of, even though you still hear independent voices, it all sort of sounds like the same guy edited all of it. And then it gets rendered into Russian. So for the Russian content, Andre could just go right back to the original Russian content, and much of that is preserved in the book, then with his own editorialisms on it. But for the local language content, I mean, look at this cycle, right? It starts from the local language, goes to English, and then goes into Russian. right? So
Yeah.
now it's already twice removed from the original source material, and Andre himself is likewise, like me, limited in his ability to really say, does this really make sense a whole lot in Russian and so forth. So we have to get the bloggers involved to cross-check, to check it out, and so on. And mistakes happened, and it's good to be here at bar camp so people can actually tell me, oh God, this is not really how you should translate it into Russian, or wow, it's fantastic, you got it right, or so like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, that's okay.
How much do you think is being lost in translation? Let's say, could you feel that you missed some part of the narrative because of the translations? I ask that because Global Voices has a big lingua system, and sometimes.
So do we, New Eurasia. I mean, it's
Yeah.
divided at the moment for language.
And what's your opinion about that? About the inevitable
Right.
losses in
Well,
translation?
The first answer is it's inevitable, especially when you deal with languages that have sufficiently different grammatical systems than like the Turkic languages, Farsi in the case of Tajik, or Russian. I mean, just simply the way that you emote and express, forgetting the expressions, put aside the expressions, simply the way you emote and express can sometimes be sufficiently different where this poses a problem. I study Arabic, for example, and I can assure you that to get a proper understanding of a Quran in English or French, you should read 3 different translations, and then you'll probably get pretty much the picture of it, right? Because you get a more rationalist depiction on the one hand, a more poetic depiction on the other hand, and then the more literal depiction on the other hand. So, and this is the same essential problem for Sabashahana. And of course, like I said, it's been useful being here because there are some people who really just... It's funny because you never quite know what is the criterion for criticism. And what I mean is, I just had this really lovely experience with this girl came up to me, Kazakh, and I'm assuming that she can speak both Kazakh and Russian, and obviously English. And she said she had read the whole book in a single night, since last night, which is incredible. And she was so moved by it. And there, I'm sort of like, well, whatever grammatical mistakes or lacuna or whatever typos, the loss of finesse that may have happened, she just breezed right through it because somehow the essence snagged her. Whereas last night, I met another person, and she's a professional, and she already read about a quarter of the book and all that stuff, and she completely fixated on this very point. You got typos all over here, that is simply not how this should have been translated from Kazakh into Russian, and so forth, right? So, and what's the criterion there? She in general is also not that fond of new media, for instance, right? So what's going on here? What's the dynamics behind it? So this is the problem that translators always face in any work, because the criterions for judgment can really be vast. That's not to say we shouldn't try harder. We're hoping that we can get a major publisher to eventually take on the book. We publish it ourselves, and if that happens, we'd like to release an actual second edition, update the content when possible, maybe add another chapter or two, and then most of all, go back to the Russian with Andre, and go back through it, and really fix it up when possible, and likewise the English. Why the hell not, right?